Good afternoon and welcome to today's professional learning. Today we're going to learn about the test prep protocol in preparation for the New York State ELA exams. So today we're going to talk about test prep, but before we get into that, we're going to talk about some strategies that good schools and good teachers use to improve or increase ELA test scores. So number one, people always talk about good teaching, right? Good teaching and daily opportunities to read and write lead to improved reading and writing, which ultimately improves to increased test scores on the ELA exam. If a child can't read and write, there's very little chance that they succeed on the ELA exam, even with great test prep. Number two, experience with wording of questions. So frequent experience hearing, responding to the types of questions that will be found on the exam. Number three, test taking strategies. Four, knowledge of format and structure of the test. Number five, tapping into the social emotional world, healthy confidence with self-awareness. So we want our students to be confident when they take that test, but not overconfident. You'll often find that you'll talk to a student who's a struggling reader and writer, and they'll finish the test in 40 minutes, and you'll ask them how they think they did, and they'll say, oh, it was so easy. I did great, right? That's healthy confidence, but without self-awareness of where I am as a reader, writer, and test taker. You want students to be confident enough that they can tackle the challenges within the exam, but also self-aware enough to know when it's a challenging question and that they're going to have to tap into some of those strategies that they've been taught. And number six, which I think sometimes is a little bit underscored and underrated and can make such a huge difference, is that game day preparation, right? Rest, good night's sleep going into the day of the test, good nutrition, hydration. I am not against a little bit of caffeine the morning of, okay? If that's going to help the brain be alert and on point and mentally in the zone, it's those little things that we even do when we're taking a test that help us and get us alert, focused, and in the zone that also can help our students. The sleep, though, that's a big one. Without sleep, they're not doing well. So when you look at the philosophy on test prep, you have schools that say no to test prep, and you have schools that are really heavy on test prep, and you have a lot of schools that have a combination of both approaches and meet in the middle. So schools that say no to test prep are against it because they believe that quality teaching comes from authentic learning experiences, project-based learning, independent choice-based reading, and that when we're engaging students in quality reading and writing experiences, it's going to just lead to improved reading and writing skills, which is going to translate to success on a test, right? You've heard that a good teacher doesn't need to do test prep. That's one theory. Then you have schools, a lot of charter schools in particular, that are really, really heavy on the test prep. They shut down all of their instruction a month before the test or even sooner than that. And they're just engaging in test prep units. They abandon the core and the programs that they're using in favor of test prep. And part of the argument there is some of the students are lacking grade level skills when it comes to reading and writing. So if we overcompensate by doing a lot of test prep, our kids will know the structure of the test inside and out. They know the types of questions they'll see, and I'm giving them a leg up on the competition in that sense to get them through the test. And then there's the middle, which is where we want to be. It's a combination of both approaches. So we don't want to abandon authentic learning experiences within our core curriculum. But we also don't want to skip test prep, because if you think about yourself for a second and you think about a test that you took even as an adult, it probably to a certain degree didn't matter how much you knew about that topic, but if you knew about the format of the test and the types of questions you would see or the types of tasks that would be assigned on that test, you're going to be more prepared. One, your confidence is going to increase going into the experience. So your anxiety will decrease, which plays a role in how you do. And also, you're just overall more prepared. You've had experience and practice with the format of the test. So the goal is really finding the balance, and that's what the test prep protocol does. We want to aim to implement test prep in short, frequent doses. We don't want to wait until the month before the test to hit them with test prep, stopping all other instruction in the process. That is often a little too late and can be overwhelming to kids. Quick story, going back about 6 years ago, my school that I came from originally was engaging in the test prep protocol and some test sophistication work, right? And then about, I want to say 3 years ago, maybe 4, the teachers really pushed. I was a coach at the time. They pushed for a test prep unit. They said, oh, I think the work with the test prep protocol is great, but I just think we need more of it. Let's do more of it, right? And we agreed. And so we shut down our core instruction for about 3 weeks out of the state exam. So it was basically a month that all the kids were doing was test prep and then the math block and other subjects. But ELA was just test prep pretty much, with a little bit of other things in there, but heavy on the test prep. So what happened? What were the results? I was in classrooms. I saw excellent test prep lessons, like close reading lessons, really great stuff, kids engaging in great debate, evidence-based discussion. And I thought, this is it. The scores are really going to go up even more because the kids are that much more prepared. But guess what? They didn't. And when we talk to students and teachers following that experience, the feedback from a lot of the kids was they felt burnt out going to the test. They did feel prepared, but they just felt like all they were doing was test prep and they were getting a little bored with it, right? They felt prepared, but they were bored with it. So it almost reached that tipping point where we had too much of a good thing. And then that also impacts going into the day of the state test, game day. There's less of that excitement almost leading up to it or that novelty because that's all they've been doing for the past month. So with the test prep protocol, you're going to get more frequent practice, but in short intervals. And number 2, you're going to minimize disruption to the core curriculum and other components of the literacy block that are essential in building reading and writing skills authentically. So some of our students in 3 to 8 still, believe it or not, need phonics instruction or other skills that are going to be outside of the realm of test prep. And they're not going to get that if we're too heavy on the test prep. So we want to maintain some of the other things we're doing, small group targeted instruction and expeditionary learning, and within that, the small group work, because we'll have a balance of learning experiences for all of our students. Here's an overview of some of the key components or qualities of the test prep protocol. So small but frequent doses of test prep from September to March. We did not start in September, but typically that's what you would aim to do when rolling this out. It takes only 10 to 20 minutes of class instructional time per day, so it's minimal and it doesn't cut into other things. It's similar to Allison's 20-minute protocol, but it covers more material and there's less scaffolding. Those are the 2 main differences you'll see. You're going to cover 2 passages from the released items, 10 to 12 multiple choice questions, and 2 short responses per week. It minimizes disruption to core instruction by assigning independent work for homework. So this is a really key element of the protocol when it was developed. How do we maximize instructional time and still do a little bit of test prep each and every day without taking large chunks from the core? And the only way to really do that is doing something like Allison developed, which is just going to cover a little less material though, or assigning the independent work for homework. So they're going to do the reading and answering of the multiple choice questions for that passage at home. They're going to come in prepared to discuss, engage, debate, and go over it with you. Build stamina by tackling a full passage and set of questions at once. So we're not breaking it apart too much across the week. They're going to do in one night one passage with 6 multiple choice questions. I would encourage my students to set a timer for 20 to 30 minutes, even though the state test is still untimed. We want to try and build that stamina up and get them to pace themselves, because eventually we don't know when that time limit will return. 20 to 30 minutes is really the target amount of time that it should be taking. The test prep protocol is very student-centered in its approach, and I think that you'll find that if you get observed during the test prep protocol, it really lends itself well to rich text-centered discussion and debate, where you have a good opportunity to lean into highly effective practices in 3B and even 3C, because it's just very student-led. You could even in time take yourself completely out of the equation, other than monitoring the room and giving feedback and questioning here and there over time. You could have a student even take your place during the closing part of the protocol. And last, one of the advantages is, although I know it's a minority right now of parents that are involved in the homework process and the education process, we need more involvement. For those that are involved, this exposes parents to the New York State test format and questions by incorporating the released items into homework. So those of my parents in the past that were interested in their child's education and wanted to be on top of it, wanted to support and help their child with homework, or were concerned enough to get a tutor, those parents really liked the fact that they got to see what their kids would experience when they take the state test. And for some parents, it was a wake-up call where they saw, wow, my child really needs help. They're way behind grade level. And this was what exposed them to that. So what does the protocol look like? The protocol spans the course of a week. On day 1, on a Monday, you start fresh because they don't have any homework on a Friday evening. So you introduce passage 1. You might pull it up on your smartboard, go over the title, make some predictions about what it may be about, if it's a fiction or nonfiction text, look at the text structure briefly, and then preview the questions together and read the questions together. I'll talk later in the presentation about more heavy scaffolding that you could use in a class that has a large chunk of early readers between levels D and I, and what I might do in that situation. But overall, you don't want to read the passage to students on a Monday, unless you're going to fall into that category, which I'll later address, right? Because you want the heavy cognitive work to be on the students. So you're just going to introduce the passage, scan the text structure, preview the questions, send them home to do it for homework. They're going to read passage 1, answer the multiple choice questions, highlight, underline evidence with question number at home. This is what it should look like. And this slide is included in the slide deck that you'll get that's for the student presentation. So you're going to have all the slides you need to roll this out with your kids handed to you, but this is a slide for kids to show them what you're expecting in terms of underlining and annotating the text. So the question number 25 says, how does paragraph 5 relate to paragraph 4? You see that students here have been trained to put a box around paragraphs 4 and 5, underline evidence as they reread and engage in close reading, and then tag the evidence with the number 25 on the side here. And why do they do that? That's important actually, because when you roll this out, you'll tell kids, why highlight or underline and annotate the text? Why do I need you to do that? Well, there's 3 reasons. Number 1, to prove that you actually did your homework, because anyone on a multiple choice day can just circle, 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 right? A, B, B, A, C, D, done. I did my homework. But you're not accepting that. That does not mean that the homework has been completed. What you're looking for is you're looking for the evidence that the thinking and the reading comprehension work and close reading has really been done, as evident by underlining and annotating, right? So that's how you'll know. So number 1. Number 2, to prepare for discussion with our team in class the next day, you're going to see as I get into the discussion protocol that it's going to be a lot easier for students to engage in that discussion protocol if they actually tag the question number next to their evidence, because because as we're discussing, let's say number 2, what new information about Willie does the reader learn in paragraph 12? Here we box number 12. I've got the number 2. So if we're discussing number 2, I quickly can go to paragraph 12 and look at what I underlined and jump right into the conversation with my classmates because it's been tagged with the question number. And number 3, of course, to improve our chances of getting the answer correct. I'm sure you've been teaching your kids all year, it's heavy in expeditionary learning, that in order to improve the chances of getting a comprehension question correct, we need to engage in close reading, return to the text, and find evidence to support our answer choice. So that's what they're doing for homework on Monday night and on Wednesday night. It's going to repeat with the second passage. On Tuesday, when they walk in, it's time to discuss the multiple choice work they did last night for homework. So they're going to engage in a protocol that is going to be all about reaching consensus. And you'll go through this with your students when you roll it out, and you'll talk to them about what it means to reach consensus. What does it mean to reach consensus? It means to be in agreement, right? So the goal here is to engage in discussion and debate to convince everybody in the group of one choice. So how this works, pretty simple. Personally, and I'm going to be modeling this in some classes, but personally, I would fishbowl this with a group of maybe 4 of my best discussion stars, my discussion superstars. Maybe add yourself to the group if you think you're needed to fishbowl this early on. But there will be one team leader. You want a team leader at each table who's strong enough to lead and facilitate the discussion and who's trainable to do so. So the team leader will read the question aloud to the team along with the choices and poll the team on the answer chosen. So for example, here the team leader will say, okay guys, number 2, what new information about Willie does the reader learn in paragraph 12? Ready guys? A, he is more than he seems. Their hands will go up if they think that. The team leader will look around. B, he is a generous person. Up, no hands. C, he performs with a vibrato. Ooh, one hand went up for that. D, he plays with something in mind. No hands. So then the team leader is going to say, okay, so 4 of us thought it was A, and 1 of us thought it was C. And maybe the team leader will point to that person who thought it was C and say, Jamie, you thought it was C. Why did you think it was C? And Jamie will explain why she thought it was C, going back to her evidence that she's underlined last night for homework. Then it gives the other 4 students the opportunity to now respond to her and try and convince her that it's not C and it's A. So they might say, but Jamie, I disagree with you because in the text it says da 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 da. And she might say, but no, because it says da 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 da. And then someone else says, yeah, but Jamie, look, right here, let's read this together. And let's look back at the question, the wording of the question again and what it's asking. And eventually, hopefully, Jamie will say, oh, I see. No, I think I get it now. Guys, I think I'm going to change my answer to A. And that's what you want. You want them to really engage in that critical thinking in their discussion, that they're really debating each other and trying to convince the ones that didn't pick the same thing as them that it's that. Okay. On Tuesday night, they're going to answer a short response question with the same passage, and they'll use race or rap or whatever you guys use in your grade level to respond to that short response question, and they again should highlight underline evidence. Then Wednesday, they're going to come in and they're going to engage in reaching consensus protocol, but it's a little different. It's partner to partner work. So partner A will read the work, their short response work, to partner B, while partner B looks at, that's important, not just listens, looks at the writing and evaluates partner A's work using the 2-point short response rubric. And the 2-point short response rubric is included in your slide deck for students. You'll be able to pop it up on the board. I would use this more in my middle school classes or my 3 to 5 classes that are already very familiar with the basics of what's expected in a short response. As my third graders who are new to state testing engage in this work, I would probably just start by putting this up on the board. Have them ask each other, okay, so did you restate? Oh, yes, you did. You restated right there. Good. All right, did you answer the question? Let's look at your answer and just use maybe race or rap to give feedback. For my classes that are somewhere in the middle of both of those spectrums, I would probably use this slide, which has some key questions that they can think about as they're looking at their partner's short response. Does it make sense? Has the question been answered? Did he or she restate in the beginning of their first sentence? Is there evidence from the text? 2 pieces? Should they add another piece of evidence? Does the evidence connect to their answer? Do they explain the evidence further or end their answer clearly? Do the ideas link and build throughout the response? So again, you can use any one of these 3 slides as kids are working in their partnerships. Partner B will give feedback to partner A. Partner A makes changes, they switch roles. Sometimes you'll have that one partner did the homework and one didn't do the homework. This is an opportunity for the one who did the homework to assist the one who did not do the homework and get going, right? If I have 2 kids in a partnership that didn't do it, I say, get moving. What are you doing here? Right? And we're going to talk more about the consequences for not doing homework and how that's embedded in your class culture. But it won't shut down the process if you have a few kids that didn't do it, right? When you're done with that, you're going to craft a short model response together. And I would probably just do it up on the smartboard, color code it. You could chart it out. I like color coding it and matching the color in race. Like if you go back and look at the race logo that was up, the R was blue, the A was green. This helps students see how we're using race or rap or rad to craft a short response. Now, I will say though that this is not needed if, just go back, sorry. This is not needed if you notice with the short response work that your whole class pretty much nailed it. Like if you're circulating the room during that partner work and you see pretty much everyone nailed it, I would not waste my time in bringing them back and doing a shared writing together as a whole group because they've already gotten it. The data in 3D is already showing they got it. So what I would do is just have 2 exemplary students pop their work under the document camera or Elmo, pop it up, have them read their work to the class, and then have the class give some feedback about glows and grows, what they liked about it, what they think he or she could do better for next time, and call it a day, right? If you notice also on the flip side, during that partner work that the kids are really struggling and whatever they did last night for homework, it's off. And it's pretty much the whole class that's off. That's you, 3D, gathering assessment data, right, as you're walking around, and then you make that quick decision and being a flexible educator to say, all right, guys, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. I'm noticing that we're a little bit off in terms of the answer that we got for last night's short response. So let's bring it back up here. And then I would just give heavier scaffolding and do it together and give less time for the peer revision process because it's just not working. They need heavier scaffolding. So those are some of the decisions and adjustments that you'll make when rolling this out. Wednesday night, they'll read passage 2. You'll introduce passage 2 at the end of Wednesday in school. And they'll do the multiple choice. Come in Thursday, do the discussion protocol for multiple choice. Thursday night, same passage 2 with short response question. Come in Friday, do the same protocol, peer-to-peer revision on the short response, shared writing. And that's it for the week. They don't have homework on Friday night. So as you assign for homework, some of the structures you want to think about as you roll this out. Dana and I were talking about this, and she was saying that a cover sheet would be recommended just to build structure to this, even perhaps in middle school, but we can talk about it. We're totally okay with kids copying their homework in a notepad or planner if they're familiar with the routine and if that's what's going to work, if they're going to do their homework. If it's going to increase the chances of them doing their homework by having a cover sheet on the packet, then go for it. It's your call. It's up to you guys as a team. It will, I will say, make the directions clearer, and it will increase the odds of parents understanding A, that there is homework, and B, what the expectations are. Please submit the copies of the packet to Linda by Thursday of the week before. The cover sheet is optional, but the passage and questions, and we'll go over that more when we go around to rooms today, but we have an Excel spreadsheet that has all the released items on it, and it's checked off for the ones that we've already used for the test simulation, the holiday break homework packet, or if you've used it already in your instruction, right? So that way we can keep track and make sure we're not assigning things for homework as a grade team that we've already used for the test simulation or another purpose. I'm going to include this. You'll have a copy of this. Some teachers in my old school, they would always ask, well, Langan, what does a lesson plan look like for this? This is what my lesson plan looked like for this. It honestly stayed the same day to day. I think the only thing that would change is, I'm trying to see if there's any change. It really just takes you through the protocol. The only thing you would have to change is the standards here on top, depending on your grade level and the objectives. But you can use this. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's just a protocol. So these are slides that you'll have in a student presentation for classroom use. I'm not going to go through them, but these are ones that you'll actually use with the kids to roll this out. There are videos on here of students engaging and reaching consensus. It happens to be for math in the 2 videos I found on YouTube. But throughout the week, I'm going to be working with a couple classes in their rooms to roll this out with those classes. And I will be sure to get some videos of our students engaging in this process. I regret not getting videos of my own kids and kids in my old school doing it. But these videos can be helpful because it will show students what that argument sounds like and looks like when you're working in a group and trying to convince somebody to change their mind. These are discussion stems that you can display on the board while they're engaged in the multiple choice discussion protocol. Like, you want to hear these, and I would reward these when I hear them. When I hear text talker language, accountable talk stems, boom, I would be giving, I don't know what system you have in your class or if you can use a Panther buck for that, but I would reward it to try and increase the use of the accountable talk stems and text talker language. This is one more for grades 4 to 8 because it's a little more complex. Again, incentivize the discussion stems. This is just a slide that you could use when you bring them back after the multiple choice. You might have found that questions 4 and 6 were the hardest. And so you might pull question 4 up and go over it more teacher-led and involve the kids in a little bit of their feedback. And then maybe number 6 was the big one. So you want to turn that into like a little 5-minute debate. So I would say, all right, if you picked A, that corner, B, that corner, C, this corner, D, that corner, and then you face off. Or if it was narrowed down between 2 choices, maybe you get that far as a class, and then you say, all right, guys, we're really split between A and D. How about this? Everyone who thinks it's A, go to this side of the room. Everyone who thinks it's D, go to this side of the room. And you engage in a 5-minute debate, and you're trying to convince the others to cross over to your side or join your corner, right? Until you have everyone on the same side. That's something fun and engaging, and that taps into 3B and 3C and Danielson too. One thing you need to stress to kids is if everyone got the same answer when the group leader polls, like let's say everyone put their hand up for A, then you've already reached consensus. You don't want to waste your time engaging in conversation about something that you already all agree on, right? It doesn't make sense. But you're just going to have one person explain why that answer is justified or correct and move on. So one person will say, okay, so we all agree it's C. It's C because in the text it said da 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 da, and everyone will say, okay, yep, I agree, that's the same evidence I had, and you move on. You want to spend more time on the questions that you are in disagreement about. That's where the learning happens. This slide you can use for self-assessment. That taps into 3D too. If they got 6 correct, 6 out of 6, tell them that's like a level 4 on the state test. 4 out of 5 correct, that's a level 3. 2 out of 3 correct, level 2, almost, not bad. Keep going. 0 out of 1 correct, level 1. Need more practice, but don't feel discouraged. So it's all about growth. You want to encourage them to be honest. If you want them to close their eyes and put their fingers up to show you how many they got correct or what level, then you can do that to encourage it being anonymous, but you want them to be honest and build a culture where mistakes are okay and it's all about growth. So these are just some of the other slides in your slide deck. I like this. This is something I only used more recently, Trash, Trick, Treasure. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. It makes it into a game where they're trying to find the treasure, the one perfect answer. There's usually one trick in there. So if you can eliminate 2 bad answers or poor answers, that's the trash. You throw out the trash first. Then you narrow it down to 2. You have a trick and a treasure, and you want to find the treasure. Probably too cute for middle school, but it's cute in 3 to 5. Again, these are just other slides to show you how teachers have engaged in this work in the past. Sometimes it's helpful to have the text, the part of the text that you'll need to examine and going over it. Like if you know number 8 is going to trick your kids up, I would prepare a slide that has the question on it with the text, because sometimes, at least for me, it was hard to have the text on the screen at the same time as the question and be annotating both the question and the text at the same time and allowing kids to see both at the same time. So that was sometimes helpful. Sometimes it's helpful to take slides that you've used in expeditionary learning that relate to the question to show them the transfer between EL to the test questions. So that could be helpful. And sometimes it might be helpful to use the scored responses and the scoring pack. If you need help finding that, Dana, Tanya, or I can help you with that. But it might be helpful sometimes to pop one of those up when you're going over one of the short responses that's in those scoring packets, to take a look at what other kids did and talk to your class about how you would score that response. Okay, so we're going to end here with this. There are going to be 2 barriers to successful implementation of the test prep protocol. There are going to be 2 things you guys say are barriers. Number 1, I'm going to hear, Miss Langan, they're not completing their homework. So we're going to talk about that. And number 2, I'm going to hear that students who are emergent or early readers are unable to do this work. It's just too hard. And I hear both of those barriers, but there are ways to address them. So first, dealing with the first one, we have to incentivize homework and raise the bar or raise the expectation, right? I want you to think about what's a behavior that you've been successful in getting your class to do, and how did you get those results? Think back to something that you've been successful with or you are successful with right now. And I want you to reflect on how you got those results. Was it just because you set an expectation and boom, done? Or did you incentivize it and reward it? Did you praise it often? How did you get those results? How did you get the whole class to buy in? And then also I want you to think about what's a behavior you had trouble getting your class to engage in, but then later got success. How did you get those results? Usually when you're having trouble and then you later get buy-in, it's usually you had to reward or incentivize it. So here are some things that we thought about as a leadership team. Even Martinez was saying, give a Panther buck for each student who completed the assignment fully, right? Let's flood it early on, and then keep raising the bar for what your expectation of what fully means. Like in the beginning of this, if they attempted it and it looks like it's done, even though in your head you're like, that's really not totally done. That's not what I want. But it's early, right? Give the Panther buck, but give them the feedback that I think that your annotations and your underlining for your evidence, it needs to be more spot on. I'm not so sure that you totally invested in this work, right? I want to see you step it up. Tomorrow, I'm only going to give a Panther buck if I see you step it up in that area. So you're constantly raising the bar for what you expect. We said we would do this too. Miss Reed agreed. Right now, only the out of classroom people have Panther paws, but we'll give a Panther paw. You can get one from us each time the whole class completes the test prep work. If you've got 100%, that's a Panther paw for that class. So they can quickly start racking up the Panther paws if the leaders in your class can motivate those stragglers to get going on their homework and do it and make an attempt, right? Nobody wants to be the only one or the only few who didn't do something, right? So that can be a motivation. You could add an extra incentive for your students or class that works with your class, rules, and style. That's up to you. And think about this, the more your students meet your expectations, the less is needed. You can wean off some of those things. It's always amazing, like in those classrooms that have really awesome management, they really don't need Panther bucks. They really don't need pizza parties. They really don't need all those things because the kids just get in line with what the expectations are. So it just becomes an expectation. This is a big one, and I think sometimes teachers do this the opposite way, and it's a mistake. You only want to contact parents when it is excessive and a trend. You want to really make it about the student and their responsibility, right? Hold the student accountable more than the parent. These are 3rd through 8th graders, and this will be a little trickier in 3rd grade. That's the only place where I can see this being a gray area. But 4th and up, I would tell my kids, this is not your parents' homework. That's not their job. Don't put it on your parent, or don't tell me your parent brought you here or there last night. It's your job to get your homework done, right? You want to be successful in life? You need to get your homework done. And this isn't about mom and dad. This is about you. You are 10 years old or you are 12 years old. You need to be responsible for getting your homework done. This is your job coming to school. Homework is part of your job, right? So make that a conversation and raise the bar there. If you're constantly reaching out to a parent, the parent is just going to be annoyed by you, and it's just going to reinforce probably to the kid. They'll say, oh my gosh, your teacher is bothering me too much about this, right? Put it on the kid. Work with the kid first and only reach out to the parent when it is excessive, or you know it's a very involved parent that will have your back and actually will help support you in getting it done. You can't change parents, but you can change your students. Some things that you could do to hold your kids accountable. This is up to you. We can't tell you to do this because it's your time, but you could keep a student back on a prep. If it's maybe or part of a prep, you'd have to negotiate that with the teacher to make sure they're not missing something in that class, but keep them back on a prep to complete the work or on a lunch to set a precedent, or if it's a trend or X amount of times in a week, whatever you decide, right? Sometimes I made that sacrifice once for the benefit of the next 5 months, right? I did it early on. Oh, the 8 of you didn't do homework, like when I'm first rolling something out. All right, well, you're losing your lunch. You're coming up today for lunch, right? You don't have to do that, but what I will say is that it reaps the rewards long term. When you put your foot down early on, you will get the rewards of that back later on because they see that you're not playing. Maybe if you can't do that, you could require them to make it up during lunch, like bring it to lunch or during advisory or something fun. You could take something away, let students know it impacts their grades on the report card in that responsibility section. And just create a culture of no excuses. Work hard, play hard, let them know we're headed places in life and this is part of it. This is your job, right? You're building that culture. And last, but don't rely on this, and I'll tell you why I wouldn't rely on this. Let an AP dean know. I'm more than happy to go in and talk to one of my classes in 3rd through 5th and have a strong conversation with them about how, this is part of establishing your work ethic for life and whatever, having that conversation. And then even sitting them out during recess. I'll do that. I'll support you with that. Where I can sit out a class if you're having a major problem and tell them, okay, you want to play around at home and not do your homework? Well, you're going to now sit on the side and you're not going to play outside today. You're going to just stand against the wall or sit against the fence, right? We can do that, but the only reason I'd be careful with that is because you are deferring to someone else. And when you do that, sometimes the kids don't look at you as the authority. They look at the other person as the authority. So I would only use that as a last resort after you've tried to implement some sort of consequence on your own. But if you need the support, let us know and we'll try and step in and have that conversation and issue a consequence. So if you're in one of the classes that has a great majority of students between levels D and I think this really only applies to some classes in grades 3 and 4. You might need to do a little bit of heavier scaffolding than I normally would like with the test prep protocol. So what I would do and how I would adjust it is on days 1 and 3, when you're introducing a new text to the class, do a quick read through for the gist with the class. I don't love that, but if it's needed, if the class is that low, then do it, right? It's all about the zone of proximal development and knowing if you're over scaffolding or under scaffolding. You don't want to do it if you don't need to. So now they have no excuse for not at least trying to answer the questions at night because you've read the text to them on Monday before they go home and do it for Monday night. And then at the ends of days 2 and 4, after you're done discussing the multiple choice, a heavier scaffold would be to prep students to complete the short response by reading the question together and then writing the restate part by doing that together and copying it down. So you set them up for success that night. And maybe if this scaffold is needed, pointing them in the right direction with where they might want to look for evidence, starting to talk about that to set them up for success with the short response. Remember, good teaching is always about giving the least scaffolds needed. You want to scaffold appropriately for the learner in order to allow them to engage in the hard cognitive work, aka productive struggle, a term that's been referred to so much in the education world, right? Because the learning only happens when they engage in that productive struggle. If you over scaffold, they're not going to be able to do it on the state test, right? So you want to walk that line between over and under scaffolding. If you don't scaffold enough and they're that low, then they'll just be frustrated and they won't do it, right? So you need to use your judgment and your knowledge of students. And this is the last and final slide. What do I do for my non-readers, emergent readers, or newcomer E&L students? Well, it's just not purposeful. If they're trying to learn how to finger point to words and read words like the and, don't assign it to them. That should be a very small percentage of kids, but assign an alternative assignment that helps build emergent and early reading skills that's appropriate for them. It's also not purposeful for newcomer E&L students with no or limited English proficiency. Assign an alternative assignment that helps build English proficiency. When engaging in the protocol in class, assign IXL or ask this small group of students to engage in a literacy center appropriate for their skill level. If you feel the student would benefit from being a part of the discussion or shared writing, then include them in that. So use your judgment. The only time it might be appropriate for a newcomer L to engage in this work is if their student that comes reading and writing in proficiency in their native language, right? So then in that case, I know the recommendation would always be to give them a translated text and have them engage in this type of work. But that would be the exception. Please fill out the Google Form exit ticket that was included in the email to ensure that you have listened to this presentation, you fully understand how to implement the test prep protocol, and also provide us with any questions you may have or support needed. We're looking for some classrooms to volunteer to be spots where we work with you to roll this out as model classrooms. I've already identified a couple that I want to work with in my grades, but we're looking for more in the middle school grades. So thank you for your cooperation and professionalism. Have a wonderful afternoon, and also let us know if you would rather do this on a Zoom next time, where you have the opportunity to pause in between slides and discuss and ask questions, or if you like this, being able to watch the video at your own speed or rewind back parts that you didn't hear well. Please let us know that too in the feedback. We'll be around to field questions. Have a good afternoon.